welcome to Property Quorum. Now, we have the big team back together, the foremost 4 horsemen of the apocalypse of some sorts. Of course, with Hamish McKay of Surgeon Bay, Juliet Babulal of Gunner Cook, Chris Gilson of Root Home, and returning guest, of course, Dave Simonton of Debrook. Now, look, today's topic, one might say, was a little bit tongue-in-cheek. When too many parties slow the sale, or do they spill the pot, or whatever it is. Hamish, would you care to start us off?
Oh, well, it's too many cooks, isn't it?
That's what it is.
Yes, it depends what we're cooking, I guess. That does actually sort of help. When we look at it, we're meant to be sort of cooking up a lot of appetite in the amongst those that actually want to be buying properties and selling properties. And sadly, I don't think we see as much of that as we would like to at the moment. However, that in itself it's the time of year, of course, that we're back. The children are back from sort of school. The focus is away from that, and people are looking towards probably the next and the biggest sort of gain, which is going to be sort of Christmas. But we want a lot of things to happen before Christmas, and we can get very, very busy. And we're certainly very busy in what we're doing. However, what I am finding, and when you actually look around, there are so many people trying to get involved with conveyancing now. I mean, games like sort of football, cricket, it was interesting actually. Cricket changed. This tremendously popular 100 cricket, which has come to the UK, they changed the rules quite significantly from the conventional sort of cricket, the way it all sort of started out. However, the team stayed the same. We still had 11 people in the team. And this is actually, so many things have changed within so many of the, if you like, the truly professional sort of sports there, but the team numbers stay the same. What we're seeing at the moment is an awful lot of people. And instead of actually making that a smoother operation, it just seems to be a bit more of a stack operation. But we do have this contrast with chunk, different sort of people trying to sort of wade in and say, hey, look, this is the way it should be done. That's the way it should be done. And then we've got a government, of course, trying to get as many houses out there. But there are so many ways that is not going to happen if we don't get some of these conflicts out of the way between some of the parties. You know, can you build as well as mediate? There's a lot going on, isn't there?
Juliet, good morning to you. Is it a case of too many cooks spoiling the pot?
I think it's too many wrong cooks. So if you're knocking, I mean, I'm all for a second opinion, but if you're going to people who don't know what they're doing and they're going to cause decision paralysis, you know, a seller delaying making decisions, then yes, of course, there's going to be a slowdown because you're going to end up confused and not knowing which direction to take. For example, on a sale, you might need advice on capital gains tax that you might incur or VAT. And so if you go to the wrong accountant, if you go to a bookkeeper who doesn't quite understand, you know, the ramifications of tax, you might get it wrong. And then you're going to later down the line get a letter from the HMRC and feel, you know, the pains of that. And the issue here might be going to 2 different accountants and getting 2 separate opinions, you know, and that may slow down the process because you're then confused. And it goes back to, you know, being that broken record, choosing the right professionals, look at people who've done what you want to do and are where you want to be, and then use them as mentors or ask them the questions. But then don't go willy-nilly on Instagram or on Google and find randoms and send them, you know, questions or these consumer groups that you see, because often you've got consumers and they may tell you one thing, but you don't know the sort of particularities of a matter. And so you're taking advice from people who aren't actually looking at your matter, you know, in terms of every element of your matter. They're just looking at it from a surface level. So I do agree that having too many incorrect or, you know, the wrong team behind you, the wrong people behind you giving you advice can slow down any transaction. So not just a sale, but a purchase. You look at people who are doing development, and it's so important to have the right quantity surveyor up front telling you what your costings are going to be. So you're able to then manage expectations, your contractors' expectations, etc. So I do agree with the saying, and it just goes back to doing your diligence when you're choosing the people around you in terms of getting a transaction successfully done.
Thank you. Chris, is it too many bad actors creating analysis paralysis? As
I think it starts and ends really with the sellers and the buyers. So many sellers come to market with insanely unrealistic expectations of what they think their property is really worth.
Right.
I hear it all the time. The neighbours 4 doors down sold for 420 3 weeks ago. Yeah, but he's got a five bed detached house and you're in a 2-bed semi. So what are you trying to compare that to your house? So that's quite common. Unrealistic expectations, or I want £1 million for it. It's like, but why? It's just undeveloped land. It's just arable land. Why would I give you £1 million? Because I could get 20 houses on there. Well, I could see pigs flying today, but I'm not going to bet the bank on it. And then from the other end of the chain, you have buyers going into transactions with unrealistic expectations, to be quite honest with you. So we often see deals collapsing, and estate agents calling us or vendors calling us to try and rescue a collapsed transaction. Quite often because a buyer's gone into it offering more than the property's worth, and then when the obviously needing a mortgage, and then when the surveyor's gone in, downvalued the property and found it's full of wood rot and got a whole heap of other issues, and said, well, we'll only then lend you this much on it, and the buyer's then put in a position where they have to go and find the difference, and they have to pull out, they have to withdraw. But you're so far down the process at that point, it's not just a case of offers in, it's offers in, and then surveys done and mortgage lending, all the paperwork done. So yeah, you're quite a way into that process at that point, at which point you do get a very frustrated vendor or a very frustrated estate agent, or both, coming back to you and saying, this so-and-so, it's like, we were expecting this to complete and we're now 3-4 months down into the process, and the vendor's already mentally spent the money. So then having that offer withdraw from them, and then having to start the process again, they're potentially in a bit of a tighter spot than they were when they started that process.
Is that because the unrealistic expectations were fed by people feeding them with unrealistic potential gains?
Yes and no. I think it's partly themselves. Partly greed comes into play. Some bad advice, some maladvice, misadvice, depending on who you're talking with in different parts of the process. So estate agents, for example, will always ham up a potential value of a property to get a listing on their books, and then will start to manage the client as they're not getting the offers that they expected, or it's been sat on the market for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. So yeah, that's just one aspect. Buyers going in with just unrealistic expectations, seeing what everything's listed for on the market and thinking, well, that must be the market price, rather than looking at the sold comparables. So which is really governing what people are prepared to pay, rather than what people would want to be selling their property for. So yeah, there's a whole mix in there.
Welcome, Dave.
Thank you.
Is it, according to Hamish, the way in which the current property market is running is, frankly, just not cricket?
Yeah, look, what everyone said so far, I agree with. I mean, I think it comes down to a few key elements. I think, firstly, as Juliet has already alluded, do your due diligence around the professionals involved in the transaction. That's critical. The second thing is that, using Chris's example of where, you might have dry rot in a property or whatever, you need to do your own due diligence, and, just not rely on everybody. The attention to detail on transactions are vitally important. But thirdly, and I think one of the most important things is you've got to have willing parties who can communicate and work together to get a deal over the line. And at the moment, we've just got such a disparity of all different parties. There's lots of uncertainty, and you could also argue that maybe our process should be streamlined and there should be less cooks, and we should have a system like Scotland, for example, where things happen a lot quicker and it's straightforward. But I just think that there's just so much uncertainty with everything. But the professionalism and the communication, based on what I see, is critically important. I can go to some lenders on a transaction. One lender can say it's going to take 2 months. Another lender can say we can do it in a week. So it's generally speaking the same sort of transaction. So how can somebody do it that quick? Well, it's generally down to the due diligence and the quality of the professionals in order to get the transaction completed.
So are you saying that we are returning to the Wild West where loads of people give opinions, some of which are frankly opinions based on either their own self-interest or just lack of knowledge?
Yeah, I think whether we are, because we're in a tighter market, so there's an element of desperation and hope value. But again, it goes down to doing your due diligence, as Chris alluded to. There's no point in saying my property's worth 500,000 if every property around me of the same size and type has been sold for 300,000. So when you do your due diligence, you base it on evidence and facts, not on hope.
All right. Hamish, I would have thought that your comparison with 2020 cricket, which I quite enjoy, is that you've always got an umpire you can turn to. It just seems like there are lots of different umpires here.
And umpires have been known to make mistakes as well.
Well, yes.
We can't. So they bring in basically they photograph the whole thing, or they film it and they slow it up and they speed, and even then, errors can be made. So nothing is faultless. We will find that there are challenges wherever we go.
Sure.
But it's what we actually do with those challenges. I mean, it's not the challenge in itself that causes it, the majors around. It's what we've done beforehand. And I mean, this way, I mean, it must be an almost thankless task for the likes of Dave, for example, because he's out there trying to get these deals together, to get them to work, to get for these particular sort of developments. And then all of a sudden, we hear in the background there, the interest rates are going up again. And I think, well, what's actually bringing that on? Well, there's so many things that really are coming into what is going on. And what doesn't help, and I mean, sadly, this happens all too often, because people can go onto the internet now. And I think the internet is absolutely incredible because it enables us to access so much more than we were able to do. However, with everything else, like everything else, is with caution. The number of websites you go into, and I purposely don't do it on my own website, is, get a price for such and such a thing. Because I don't know what the heck somebody's going to do. I mean, if I want some toothpaste, you look how many toothpaste there are on the market now. It's unbelievable. You wouldn't sort of credit it sort of in a way, or you walk into not that I've walked into a pub and asked for some orange juice in a long time, but however, to actually go into now, what sort of kind of orange juice do you want? There's about 27 types. No wonder prices are going up when you've got to have 27 different types of that. But you put in this information into the website and it churns out this particular, but it's only based on the information that's actually being put in there. And it's like AI is average intelligence. It's only as good as what it's powered with. Now, I think sort of sadly what we've got is a situation people are relying on information they perhaps got from the internet, as Dave sort of indicated, and also sort of Chris as well. You've got this disparity in prices, and you can actually look at them. And of course, those of us who actually have an element of understanding, we're actually looking, and we can see why there's differential, why that one's cost 516,000 and that one's only 320,000, because we've actually sort of seen what it is. First of all, it was when the property was sold or when the property was bought. That one's got loads of land. That one actually hasn't got any land, but it's back to Get that team involved. You yourself need, as an individual, when you want to buy, when you want to sell, you need to set yourself up and organize yourself around. It's not just buyer beware, it's seller beware. And in actual fact, it's not as bad as an awful lot of people suggest. What we do have, we haven't got the momentum yet to get those number of properties over the line that we would like. But there are too many little bits and pieces here and there which are slowing aspects down that we do it. If people would ignore that and just listen to, find a professional you believe in and actually work with that professional, get that right team of, these days, of course, in cricket, you can actually buy the franchise. You don't have to spend the money to get the right experts around you. Speak to people and get the right experts.
Certainly, it costs far less to get the right experts around you than it does to amass a decent team. Anyway, moving on from there, we've got a comment in from Spencer Collins. He says, if someone as high profile as Angela Rayner can find themselves caught up in confusion over stamp duty and property rules, what's that say about a system where ordinary buyers and sellers without teams of advisors are expected to navigate chains of estate agents, conveyancers, lenders, and piles of paperwork without the whole process grinding to a halt? And I think I'm going to throw this over to you, Juliet.
Completely agreed. I mean, this is again what we're saying, find the right people. A lot of it, I mean, I agree with Chris. Some of it is self-inflicted. If you're in a situation where you're creating confusion or you're assuming, you're making assumptions, but they're not based or backed by fact, you're going to find yourself slowing that down the process. And equally, as Spencer has said, if you've chosen the wrong professionals, I don't know, because there's a stream of thought that Angela did not actually get proper advice. Lawyers aren't really there, especially conveyancers, not there to give you tax advice. You need to seek proper professional advice from an accountant who knows what they're doing, especially if you're trying to avoid paying the tax, so that it's not something that's illegal. It's imperative that you do your homework. It's imperative that, when you go to people like Dave, you disclose things. Dave mentioned dry rot. If you know your property's got dry rot, don't assume the lender's not going to find out about it. They're going to find out about it, and you're going to be disappointed when you see that valuation. So the consumer ultimately has to pick up the pieces or deal with the consequences once the transaction completes. But the consumer also has a duty to themselves to actually find the right professionals, but also disclose as much information as they do have. You've got sellers who complete the seller's information form. Don't lie on those forms, because they'll be subject to misrepresentation. So if you're getting advice from someone who says, oh, just write no, not applicable on everything, that's the wrong advice. And so there's too much information available now, information that can actually be vetted, that's available to the consumers for you to seek the wrong person. There's reviews, there's websites like Glassdoor where you can actually go and get professional reviews on all of the professionals that you use. Speak to people that have done the transaction before and see who they've used, and then go and use them. But it's not really an excuse when you're the consumer and you're finding yourself in a position where you're confused and causing your transaction to slow down.
Chris, can I ask you as well the same question? Let me bring up Spencer's comment once again. Angela Rayner caught in confusion over stamp duty and property rules. Sellers without teams and advisors are expected to navigate chains of estate agents, conveyancers, lenders, and piles of paperwork. What do you think?
Yeah, we're all screwed.
Good. I like a short answer. Dave, can I have something? Can I a comment from you?
Look, at the end of the day, I completely agree with everything that Juliet said, but ultimately, I think what Spence is also alluding to is it that the system is so complicated and confusing? Can it be simplified? So if you're somebody of Angela Rayner's status or whatever, and you are taking tax advice, that is probably not in line with the norm. But ultimately, we all know the system can be streamlined, it can be simplified, and like most things, it's a hell of a lot more complicated than it needs to be.
Sorry, I jumped away for comedy value. Chris, do you have anything more cogent to say?
I echo what Juliet was saying. You need to take the right advice, and for someone in her position, it's kind of staggering that she didn't.
Well, exactly. You know, you surround yourself by the best experts. Do you not, Hamish? Would you please take us home?
Well, I think actually sort of Dave sort of rather hit it in a way. Why don't we simplify the system? Now, the interesting thing is, it can be actually, it is as simple as we can choose it to be, providing we're working with the right sort of professionals. And there are people out there now, and they're working very, very closely together. And this is something which we haven't seen in quite some time. Those professionals actually gathering as a group to say, hey, look, this seems to be the most effective way through it. Data on its own isn't the answer. You need the professionals behind that data. But that is working, is beginning to come together. It's not going to happen sort of overnight, but when people do actually look, because those in the buyers and the sellers, they themselves are the ones, they're the ones that are gaining or hoping to gain from the whole of the process. The others are just professionals who are involved. Some, as we well know, more professional than others. But there are ways through it. But it just comes back. We're back to the same. Get that team around you.
I have a last minute question again from Spencer, and this is aimed directly at Juliet. With the FCA's consumer duty placing a legal obligation on firms to deliver good outcomes for all customers, how can the property industry destroy a system where disabled buyers and sellers often face greater barriers than it's the argument that we've heard before, but what say you?
I agree. I mean, you're meant to be seen to be responsible. So that's a consumer duty requirement from the FCA. So whether you're a law firm, etc., you're meant to ensure that your client understands the message that's being translated or that's being conveyed. And so it's an individualistic thing as well as a firm-wide thing. But I think from a legal perspective, or from my perspective, if I had a client who was particularly disabled and I had to ensure that they understood what I was saying to them, then there would be checks and balances in place to ensure that. And I think it is very much an individual responsibility.
Well, I'm going to end it there, but thank you so much, all the members of Property Quorum, of course, Hamish McLeod, Lord and Master of Research Convey, Chris Gilson of Root Home, our tame property developer, and of course, Juliet Babulal of Gunner Cook, the legal eagle here that sets us straight. And finally, but by no means leastly, is that a word? It is now, Dave Simonson of Debrook. And thank you all of you for watching. It seems to me that it's the age-old adage: if you surround yourself with intelligent people who are there to help you, you'll probably get it done more swiftly, more quickly, and certainly more legally. There's a thought, hey? Until next week, keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and please try and look after that mental health. Bye-bye now.